Hey, I'm Melissa.
And I'm Whitney.
We started this true crime podcast over a glass of wine and quickly turned from true crime listeners into true crime advocates.
So get comfy, pop a cork, and grab a glass because we have work to do.
This is Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet.
Some content may be unsuitable for sensitive listeners. Discretion is advised.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Happy May. I can't believe it's already May. This year is flying by.
It really is. January took forever, but now it's just full speed ahead, and school is about to be out for the summer.
Which is my favorite season, is summer.
Because that's your birthday?
Well, I mean, like technically fall is my favorite season because fall weather is my favorite. I like the pretty tree, like when the trees change. I like around 70-ish degrees, which we only get like one day of fall in Texas. So I like to grasp onto that day as long as I can. But summer is my favorite season as a whole because, yes, probably my birthday.
Yes. And just like family time. There's so much going on in the summer. I love it. But I do look forward to the cooler temperatures, which barely happen here in Florida.
Yes. But at least your temperatures are fairly standard across the year.
Yes. Very.
You have a normal range of temperatures, whereas Texas is like, oh, we are going to be winter in the morning and summer in the evening.
Oh, yes.
So maybe I'll only visit you in the spring and the fall.
Yes. And it's crazy here in the summer. Everyone is trying to visit and the tourists are all over the place.
Yes. So happy May, happy impending summer. Although I feel like May is always super busy for parents because it's like every school event is in May. So remember to have a drink and take time to yourself. Self-care is important.
Yes, I completely agree.
So what is your wine?
I am drinking an organic Saint-Souffre. It's out of France. All it says is that it's a red wine. Doesn't give me anything more than that. But it's also called Cherries and Rainbows. And so I'll show it to you. I thought this was going to be a sweet red wine based on this label and this label alone. I was incorrect.
Is it not? Because it looks like it would. It looks like it would taste like a unicorn.
Yes, and that's why it has been in my wine fridge literally for 6 months because I thought it was sweet, but I was like, hey, I need something today. So tried this, and it's probably one of the driest wines I've had in quite a while. There is rainbows and clouds and cherries on this, so it's very like whimsical. But yes.
Do you get a lot of the cherry notes?
I do not.
Oh, I think this is one of the favorite sub things that we have learned about ourselves through the podcast is that we don't really know what we like when we're drinking and it changes because we started with boxed Pinot Grigio and here we are. Now I can't even think about tasting a boxed Pinot Grigio. It makes me like shudder.
It literally just made me gag thinking about it. How far we have come in 2.5 years, not only on our podcasting skills, but our wine drinking as well.
Yeah.
I have to say, I love this, how much we have evolved.
This journey.
Yes. More evolution to come.
Bum, bum, bum. Let's get into your case.
Yes. I have New Mexico. My case today takes place in Albuquerque, which is the largest city in New Mexico. And is one of the most beautiful places.
The land of one of our favorite podcasters as well.
It is. And I do mention him in a bit. I lived in New Mexico for a very short while my husband was stationed there. I did not live in a very beautiful place. I like to call it the dirt mound of the South because it was all brown all the time.
Wow.
Albuquerque is not like that. It's very green. You've got the mountains. You've got rivers. About 565,000 people were living in this city, according to the 2020 census. Mountains all around make this town a basin with the Rio Grande flowing through the middle. Albuquerque is a hub for tech, media, and fine arts. We have talked about some pretty dangerous places, but Albuquerque is rated a 1 out of 100. It is safe to say that the city is in the top 10 most dangerous places in the whole United States. To give you some comparisons, America's average crime rate is a 4. The state of New Mexico is almost an 8. And the city of Albuquerque is a whopping 14.
Wow.
And now I'm terrified for Eric.
Yes, Eric, please protect yourselves at all cost.
Crime isn't much better, but violent crime is astronomical in this area and needs to be addressed. I know our friend Eric from the podcast True Consequences, which strictly covers New Mexico cases, has had a hand in creating change. He continues to do fantastic work and advocate for victims in his home state. So please go follow him. Shameless plug for his podcast there. To dive deeper into one of the locations for today's unsolved murders, and yes, we will be discussing more than one death today.
Amanda, residents who live in the International District, formerly known as the War Zone, say this certainly isn't the first time they've heard gunshots in their neighborhood.
You can never know. A bullet can just come through the window, through the door, or he can just come out here and do something and get shot.
Many residents have pushed for positive change. In 2009, Bernalillo County officials in the state renamed this area within the 5 neighborhoods that used to be nicknamed the War Zone to the International District.
You have a population there that struggles with a lot of issues, and a lot of the crime that goes on there is related to those factors.
I want to focus on the area known as the International District. It is a neighborhood in southeast Albuquerque. It is one of the city's most diverse areas and is home to many international restaurants and grocery stores, which I find amazing. This place is also one of the poorest areas in the town and has an extremely high violent crime rate. This area was once known as the War Zone. I will continue to refer to it as the War Zone because of how dangerous it is, and especially when the women we are going to be talking about went missing. All the victims in today's episode were from or last seen around this dangerous area. Their remains would be found in West Mesa area of Albuquerque. These 2 locations are only about a 15 to 20 minute drive from each other.
And Albuquerque realized it had a serial killer. 11 women found buried on the West Mesa. But is APD any closer to figuring out who's behind the murders?
11 families are still mourning their daughters, women who were killed and buried here on the West Mesa. But in all these years,
we can't manufacture evidence. We can't make people talk to us.
Albuquerque police are still very short on answers in one of the largest unsolved serial killer cases in U.S. history.
We're doing everything we can.
Today, a website and tip line are still running.
It's not gone cold at all.
APD is also still offering a $100,000 reward, but by their own statements, APD may be far away from any kind of conclusion. In 2009, then-Chief Ray Schultz said there were 5 suspects. Last year, Commander Anthony Montano told News 13 that there were about a dozen.
Jamie Catalina Barella was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico on September 28, 1988. She was described as your typical teenager. She was not into drugs or gangs, and she was just 15 years old when she vanished. You see, Jamie and her cousin Evelyn were at a family gathering in March of 2004 when they decided to go to a nearby park. This park was located in the War Zone area. But the girls knew their surroundings, so it wasn't out of the question that they walked there. However, they would never be seen alive again. The cousins would be reported missing about a week later, but honestly, not much was done to search for the pair. Evelyn Jesus Maria Salazar was the cousin. She was a known sex worker who struggled with drug dependency. So because of this, it seems that their disappearances were swept under the rug by local law enforcement. Evelyn had 2 daughters, Mariah and Angel, whom she cared for full time. Her family would say she was a fantastic cook and loved the outdoors, especially camping. Selania Edwards was just 15 years old on August 17, 2003, when she ran away from her foster family in Lawton, Oklahoma. She had been in the system since she was 5 years old when her mother went to jail. She had a rough life, to say the least. She would be spotted in Colorado in 2004, then in the same rough area as the other girls of New Mexico. But this would be the last place to ever have a confirmed sighting of her. She was killed sometime between the years of 2004 and 2005. She was known to be with 3 other women that were sex workers in the area. She would occasionally use the nicknames Chocolate and Mimi. The next victim was Gina Michelle Valdez. She was born August 1st, 1982, and her family has the date of her death listed as February 2nd, 2009, even though she had been missing since 2005. She had given birth to 2 children, a daughter, Angelica, and a son, Jeremiah. Gina was also about 4 months pregnant when she was murdered. Gina's father stated in an interview, and I quote, "She brought light into the room when she came in. She was always happy-go-lucky, hardly ever down." Monica Candelaria was born June 20th, 1981. Her family described her as a person that enjoyed laughing, joking, taking care of babies, and spending time with her family. Monica was a young mother that had been involved in the gang scene as well as sex work, but those acts did not define her. She was a spirited, hilarious, and joyful person. She disappeared on May 15th, 2003, and was reported missing a few weeks later. Her case was another one that would not be appropriately investigated until 2009. The next woman was named Virginia Cloven, and she was born August 7th, 1981. Virginia had a positive impact on the people around her during her childhood. Then tragedy struck, and her life would never be the same. Virginia's brother was murdered, which sent this young lady spiraling. She would end up running away from home, which then led her to doing sex work to survive. She cut off almost all contact with her family and friends. The last time her family did speak with her was on April 13th of 2004, when she called her dad to tell him that she met a man and that she thought she was going to marry him. She was very giddy and excited about this possibility. Her father would tell her that he wanted to meet this guy and to get to know him better, but that meeting would never happen. Julie Cindy Nito was just 24 years old when she disappeared on July 15th, 2004. She loved creating her own clothes, partially because she was so petite, most clothes wouldn't fit her. She was a mother and had been struggling with dependency issues since she was 19 years old. Victoria Chavez disappeared on June 5th, 2003, but wouldn't be reported missing for over a year. Victoria was convicted of sex work 5 times, and then the missing persons report actually described her as a known drug user and prostitute, which makes me sick. Who would write that down in a missing persons report? She is still a human and deserves the same investigation as everyone else. Cases like these just make me want to scream from the rooftops that this behavior from law enforcement is not okay. A risky lifestyle does not mean these people deserve to be killed or that their killers should get away with actually committing murder. I know we haven't talked about how the remains were found, and we will shortly, but Victoria's remains were the very first ones to be identified. The last contact Veronica Romero's family had with her was in the first week of February 2004. They reported her missing on February 14th of that same year. She was just 27 years old and the mother to 5 children. According to witnesses, she got into a white pickup truck at the corner of Wyoming Boulevard and Central Avenue and was never seen again. Yet again, the police didn't really investigate her disappearance. They gave the family the normal canned response. Veronica is an adult. She lives a dangerous lifestyle. Blah, 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 blah. Another 27-year-old, Doreen Marquez, was also a mother when she disappeared on October 10th, 2003. She had 2 daughters named Destiny and Mercedes, and Doreen's life was on the straight and narrow, that is, until her boyfriend went to jail. She started to spiral and would take off for months at a time. So for a while, her family didn't even realize she was missing. They assumed she would turn up soon, just like she always did in the past. But this time, that was not the case. Cinnamon Elks was 37 years old when she went missing, making her the oldest of all the West Mesa victims. She vanished on August 20th, 2004. I want to stop speaking about the victims for a moment to go on a slight rant. How in the world is there this many women being reported missing from the same neighborhood and the same victimology, and it takes years to link together?
That was going to be my first question when you took a breath, is what the hell is going on? And why is no one connecting these dots? Even if you only had sticky notes on a push pin board, they are way too alike to not make a connection.
I completely agree. And I'm going to go over 11 women that went missing. However, the list could be a lot more. I believe up to 24. There was one detective on this case, and I will talk about her in just a bit. It's just crazy, like how this wasn't getting any media attention. 0 investigations were going on. Nothing. No one knew what was happening, except for they knew that their loved one was missing and the police wouldn't return any phone calls. You would think that they would, with this many women going missing in one area, that they would stop and think, wow, this is strange. Could they be connected? But really, we had one person that was doing that at that time. Back to Cinnamon. She had been arrested for sex work a few times and actually was friends with some of the other women that went missing during the same period of time. This war zone area was notorious for sex work, and especially on a couple of blocks in that area. So not only violence, but some killer or horrible person knew exactly where to go to find these vulnerable women. I know that was a lot to go through, but it is vital we know the people behind the case. We cannot, in good conscience, talk about a serial killer without saying the names and knowing more about the victims. The poor women were in the wrong place at the wrong time, which led them to their deaths. Anything that they had done or didn't do in the past should have no bearing on their disappearance being investigated.
It's the biggest homicide case in Albuquerque. 11 women found buried on the West Mesa.
With tears in her eyes and heartbreak still raw, Mary Gutierrez wants closure.
It's just hard. Every day, you think about this every day. It never goes away.
Her daughter is Victoria Chavez.
She was really a fun, outgoing girl. She had dreams.
Chavez is one of 11 women and an unborn baby found buried on the West Mesa in 2009.
Like I said, I am sure that there were others that went missing around the same time, but these 11 women have been linked together because they were all buried in the same spot in West Mesa. So if this same serial killer had a different dump site or different place that he buried, there could be a ton more because there are a lot of other missing persons from the 2003, 2004, 2005 time frame. On February 2nd of 2009, a woman named Christine was taking her dog, Ruka, out for a walk, and she stumbled upon an unusual-looking bone. She snapped a picture and sent it to her sister, who was in the medical field. The sister responded and said that it resembled a human femur bone and that Christine should contact authorities right away. This area was unusual because of the recession and the housing crash of 2008. Remember, this is 2009 when this is all happening. So this area was projected to be an up-and-coming neighborhood with houses being built in once undeveloped areas. However, because of the crash, many of the plots of lands designated to have homes built on them were just left as a blank slate. Contractors or developers left the land there. But there was a few homes in the area that were built prior to all this. The initial dirt work was completed, but that is all for many of the properties. Christine, who found the bone, loved this area because there was space for her dog to run and play without any issues of overcrowding or with the neighbors. She almost lived in the country without being in the country. I will post a picture of this area. At the time, I do not believe these 11 missing women would have ever been found. If they came in and the houses continued to be built, concrete would have been laid, and no one would have ever dug them up until these houses were demolished and new ones built. When officers searched for the other bones that went along with the femur, they obviously found more than they could ever imagine. Authorities were able to locate the remains of 11 women and an unborn baby within weeks of that initial bone. This discovery would be one of American history's largest unsolved serial killer cases. These findings would ignite the fight for change. With more and more remains being uncovered, the Albuquerque police brought in the FBI. The dirt had to be sifted by hand to prevent anything from being overlooked. Authorities used satellite maps, ground-penetrating radar, cadaver dogs, all in hopes of finding every piece of every person buried out there. Remember, I said that there was a detective who believed the disappearances of these women could be connected long before the remains were found. Well, that was a woman by the name of Ida Lopez. She was assigned to the cold case unit at the Albuquerque Police Department as an investigator. And since that day, she has been an advocate for these women, whom she referred to as her girls. This includes more than the victims found in West Mesa. This also includes the sex workers that were still working in the war zone. She had a great rapport with them. They could come to her with anything that they needed. She was always there for them. From the beginning, Ida believed the missing women would be found together. And she was right. Liz Thompson, who was another detective that would eventually be put on the case, stated, "The killer preyed on vulnerable women and may have previously attacked someone without killing them, and then escalated to murder and burying the bodies so as to conceal the crimes." So when these two women got on the case, they were all about it. They're both retired now, but they do contract work just for the West Mesa murders.
Good for them. And you know how we are about women power. Of course, they're in there trying to get shit done because that's what most women like to do. So go them.
Exactly. Ida, she tried to get more resources put in the war zone and tried to get other people to investigate it and to take this seriously without any luck, really, until 2009 when all of these bodies were uncovered. I could just imagine her being like, "I told you all so." We could have prevented other deaths and possibly caught this guy if they would have just listened to her back in the day. An interesting fact about this case that's very different from a lot of other cases is that all 11 women were buried without anything. 0 clothing, jewelry, 0 personal items, no traces of any foreign DNA. So to me, this dude knows what he's doing, which is a very, very scary.
He's definitely more educated than some serial killers.
Yes. I mean, this was in the early 2000s when they started being taken. So it wasn't like back in the 70s.
Sure, but it was still new enough as far as technology where they are looking for things. They're looking for foreign hair follicles or pieces of fabric, things that fingerprints even. They're looking for things that they can test in the early 2000s as opposed to, like you said, in the early 70s or late 60s, walking all over the crime scene, no one's getting anything off. It's a free-for-all.
Exactly. But it makes me think he knows some possible insider information of what, or he just studied this, but he could possibly know what police would be looking for, and he did not leave any of that behind. So you can assume from that alone, these murders were very difficult to solve, let alone get a conviction, with 0 physical evidence tying anyone to the bodies. But there have been a few named suspects over the years. And I just thought nowadays, I feel like police never name a suspect until they're literally arresting someone. No suspects' names are just thrown out there like this. This very first one that I'm going to talk about, I have no clue why they even thought of him. None. I'm going to go with the least likely in my mind to the most likely to be the killer. And this is my opinion and my opinion alone. First, we have a man named Ron. He was a businessman and a photographer from Joplin, Missouri. He would frequently travel to the New Mexico State Fair, which was literally right by the war zone, and West Mesa. I am only using his first name because even though I think he's a bit weird, police cleared him completely. His name's out there, and I just really feel bad for this man. What made Ron weird, which is completely not illegal, was that he would take photos of women who appeared to be dead. They were staged. I've seen these photos, and if you look at them, they're not gory, but how the women have their mouths open and their eyes closed and their head at a weird angle makes it look like they are deceased. However, all of those women in the pictures were alive and well, and he did nothing to them. That was just possibly his art form. I don't know. It's weird, but it's not illegal, and people are artistic.
And, when it comes to art, there's people that do that kind of thing all the time. There's people that paint with blood. There's people that paint with wine. There's people that do all kinds of stuff in the name of art. And art is in the eye of the beholder. So if that's what he wanted to create, then that's what he creates. And as long as everyone was found alive after taking those pictures, more power to him, I suppose.
Exactly. And this is why I just feel so bad for him, because and maybe if I knew what was in the report or how police came upon him, I might feel less bad. But right now I feel bad. According to the Joplin Globe, Ron fell under a cloud of suspicion in the serial murder case on August 3rd of last year, when investigators from New Mexico showed up at his properties in Joplin armed with search warrants. Why he was a suspect? That's all in the sealed warrants. That's still part of our pending investigation, said Sergeant Tricia Hoffman. She is the spokesman for the Albuquerque Police Department. If you had no flipping clue and all of a sudden police are at your door with a search warrant a few states away, saying you are a suspect in the murder of 11 women, I would pee my pants. The spokesman continued on saying, but at this point, we we've been able to eliminate him as a viable suspect. Even though I searched, I was not able to figure out why they ever thought he was a suspect and how they could possibly get a search warrant signed by a judge still baffles me. Ron passed a polygraph test and he cooperated with law enforcement completely the entire time he was being investigated. He did do the smart thing, which I recommend everyone listening do, and that is he hired a lawyer. Regardless if he was innocent or guilty, he hired a lawyer in both Joplin and in Albuquerque. He was never even arrested and charged with anything to do with these crimes. I just want to know, why him?
Yes, why? Why?
The next suspect is a man by the name of Fred Reynolds. This guy was a known owner of an escort service. I'm just going to leave that at that. You can decide what type of escort service he was the owner of.
Bet it wasn't driving.
Yes. He was going to all of the families and friends of the women missing, asking about information about their disappearances. This was before the bodies were ever found. He actually died a few months before the women were found, so police were unable to interview him at all. They did, however, speak with the family members of those that Fred had communicated with. And they all stated he didn't seem nefarious, but he was just concerned or curious about the missing women. I still had questions about this guy, so I did a little bit more digging, and I got a few quotes from his friends. So we had one friend, that was a female, stated, "He told me he was a former heroin addict himself, and this was the reason he wanted to help the women that worked for him. He wanted them to have a good life." Then we have another friend that said he wasn't violent and he wasn't abusive and he wasn't in any way a killer. Lorenzo Montoya lived very close to where the remains were found and on the police's radar for being linked to the disappearance of sex workers before 2009. He had a history of violence against women, soliciting sex workers, and murder. He met Sharika Hill online. He raped her and strangled her before trying to toss her into his car to dispose of her body. However, her pimp, Frederick Williams, was parked just outside to monitor the situation because Sharika went to Lorenzo's house for a meetup. When Sharika didn't come out of the trailer, he grew concerned, so he walked up to Lorenzo's home to see what the holdup was when he saw the unthinkable. Lorenzo was dragging Sharika, who was bound at the ankles and wrists. She was completely naked, and all of her clothing and personal items were thrown in a trash bag, along with a condom. Lorenzo Montoya had strangled this young woman to death. Frederick, right then and there, shot and killed Lorenzo right in front of his home. Inside Lorenzo's trailer, investigators found duct tape next to his bed. They also found hardcore pornography and some homemade sex tapes. One of the video recordings shows Montoya having sex with a woman, and then the tape goes black. In the following scene, on that very same tape, the camera is focused on a bedroom wall. This time, the camera doesn't capture what's happening visually, but it does capture the audio. And it sounds like duct tape being pulled from the roll and then ripped off. And then you can hear the rustling of a trash bag, possibly. This audio has been sent to audio engineer, probably to clean it up, see if they can figure out exactly what's going on without much luck. I will be adding that audio in right now, so if you would rather not listen to it, please skip ahead 15 seconds. Exactly.
Okay, so you don't know if it's a previous video that's being recorded over or if it's all the same individuals.
I actually believe it's a previous tape because the person that was in it with Lorenzo was not Sharika. We're still trying to find this woman.
Were they consenting individuals in all of these sex tapes?
It
doesn't say?
It did not get into that. There are multiple videos of women that have yet to be identified. After all of that, the last possible suspect was a man by the name of Joseph Blea. Joseph's first wife contacted police about a week after the discovery of that initial bone in West Mesa. And she told police that they should look into him. However, this guy was already on police radar. And I didn't write it in my notes, but I believe he had like 150 incidences where his name came up to authority in the years prior.
That's like a heck of a long rap sheet for you to come up in all of these searches.
Yes.
150 times? That's a lot.
Yes. When I read that, I was like, holy flippin' moly. And we're not talking parking tickets. We are talking sexual predator behavior that deserves years and years and years in prison.
Why in the hell is he still out?
Well, he's arrested now.
Yeah.
In 2004, he was still roaming the streets. This next part is graphic, so please skip ahead 15 seconds if you do not want to hear what this vile man was accused of. Joseph was serving a 90-year prison sentence after he was convicted of 4 sexual assaults unrelated to the West Mesa case. He had a rap sheet a mile long with sexual crimes. He would break into the houses of middle schoolers and sexually assault them in their own homes. He was once accused of raping a 14-year-old girl with a screwdriver.
Oh my God. Oh, you warned me, but oh my God.
Yes, I know. That case would be dropped. Don't ask me why. But there were so many other horrific crimes that this man committed. He would never be released, but that girl did not get the justice. His DNA was also linked to the murder of a sex worker that was found in 1985. So this is going on at the very latest, 1985, all the way to 2005. That is a long time for his DNA and his crimes to go unpunished.
Yes, especially with the modern technologies that they would have been able to connect him to.
Exactly. He was never charged with that crime either, the murder of the sex worker.
They already have him. It doesn't matter. Let's make sure everyone gets justice and we can sign off on him doing all of these terrible things to all of these victims. I don't care that he's already there.
Exactly.
Let's close the cases.
Yeah.
Cheese and rice.
This is a rough one. About 8 months after the bones were discovered, detectives searched Joseph's home and collected women's jewelry and women's underwear. He had a wife at this point, okay? And the wife told police that he enjoyed wearing women's underwear when having sex. She said she had, on occasion, found jewelry that didn't belong to her or her daughter in their home. And she said her daughter had found women's underwear hidden in their shed. Excuse me? I think all of that would raise all the questions.
Yeah, that's more than one flag here.
That's waving it at the bull. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Can you imagine finding underwear and jewelry? Oh, no, thank you.
No, I can't. But mainly because I have an entirely male household. So it's not even, could these be my teenage daughters? Or could these be, like my mom's or my grandmother's or some other woman living in our house?
Detectives found a tree tag buried with one of the bodies. So this was in the dirt, a few feet underground. They were able to trace this tag to a nursery in California that sends plants to Albuquerque. Joseph's business records indicated he bought plants from this nursery. It is unclear if detectives were ever able to definitively tie that tree tag to him. That tree tag could have literally come from anything. Even if it had his DNA on it, he could just say, I don't live too far. I throw out trash.
I definitely think it's circumstantial evidence. I don't think that it's not the smoking gun, as they say, by any means, but it raises enough questions to dig a little deeper.
Exactly. Investigators used satellite images to see back in time to 2004, before this area started to be developed. What they found was disturbing, and I will post a picture of this. They can see a set of tire tracks turning off the main road and going to the exact location the bodies were buried. And this was in 2004. It's just so creepy. Over 200 women that worked or lived in the war zone area, most of them sex workers, were interviewed. All of these people really knew each other. It's a populated area, but they all knew each other. They all looked out for each other. And when one would go missing, there were rumors in 2004, in 2003. And those rumors actually stated many of the victims were buried in West Mesa. They knew this, but no one ever followed up on these rumors. This area wasn't searched until 2009 when a bone happened to be found. After all this time and so many destroyed families, authorities continue to receive tips on a weekly basis. As recently as last summer, they dug into a site that they thought could possibly be a second burial ground. Nothing ended up coming from that search. They could have information that there is at least another spot where women are buried, which is insane. There is so much more to these murders and possible missing person cases that could be linked to the West Mesa murders. So I encourage you all to go down the rabbit hole, speak up for those that no longer have a voice, and be the change this world needs. Once again, I'm going to say the victims' names because they're the ones that matter in this case. We have Jamie, who is 15 years old, Monica, 22 years old, Victoria, 26 years old, Virginia, 24 years old, Selania, 15 years old, Cinnamon, 32 years old, Doreen, 24 years old, Julie, 24 years old, Veronica, 28 years old, Evelyn, 27, and Michelle, 22, and then not to forget the unborn child. Albuquerque Crime Stoppers is offering a $100,000 reward in these cases. Tips can be submitted by calling 505-768-2450 or Crime Stoppers at 505-843.
That's absolute.
I know. It's a bummer. This whole New Mexico case.
Literally every day, every case. I'm like, God. But then again, there's a reason we're doing this because none of it's fun. None of it's happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Just by listening to our content, you too are advocating for justice for these families. Thank you for making a difference in their lives as well.
We want to share a few ways you can support us to continue our mission. You can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $1 per month, or a simple rate and review on your favorite podcast platform helps us get in front of someone who may know something.
We will continue traveling state by state, seeking justice, because we will be there, no matter where,
no matter who.